This is Dr. J. Welcome to Thesising 101, where my accent changes with every video I post. In this series, we cover tips and tricks to help you in your research journey. To returning viewers, good to see you again, and to new viewers, welcome. Today we are focusing on wellness, how to cope with the pressures of research. Disclaimer, I am not a psychologist nor a psychiatrist, so if you need that type of professional support, please contact your doctor and ask for recommendations. If your campus have a psych department, you can also ask for help there. Let's get started. Look, research sucks. Creating knowledge is awesome and all, but it is difficult and time-consuming, it's soul-crushing, and it just sucks. Now, according to moi, there are two categories of suckage. Not a word, but it should be. Category number one is technical suckage. This is about not being able to understand research concepts and not being able to make them practical even if you do understand them at an intellectual level. As in, you sit in front of your computer and you don't know what to do. And that is what I struggled with the most. And it is that struggle that inspired Dr. J Thesising 101. I mean, it really shouldn't take like 3 years to figure out what a framework is. A 4-minute video should do it. Anyway. This video, however, is more about suckage category number 2, which I coined personal suckage. So this is the depression and lack of motivation, being angry with the world and with yourself for signing up for torture, and then wanting to quit every single day, but you don't because you've already paid your fees. So here are a couple of tools I use and principles I live by on a day-to-day basis that really makes a difference in my life, but also made my research journey somewhat enjoyable. Now, you don't have to follow all of these tips, but I'm putting it out there so you can select which tips can aid you best when you need it most. Okay, tip number 1, redefine how you measure progress. We have been so conditioned to measure our progress based on the deliverables we create, whether it is writing an exam or submitting an essay or paper. We freak out because of a blank page. We are so focused on the thesis or dissertation or paper or whatever it is that we fail to see the phenomenal progress we have already made. The deliverable, that thing that you are writing, is but a manifestation of your hard work. It is important, don't get me wrong, but it's not the definition of progress. When you read a paper that is adding to your knowledge, that is progress. When you eliminate an inappropriate framework after a week, that is progress. Polishing your title, getting stuck and asking for help, that is progress. If you only measure what is on the page, you will always feel as if this project is too much for you to handle. This brings me to tip number 2, which is setting SMART goals. One of the biggest sources of feeling overwhelmed or defeated on this journey is an unrealistic to-do list. I'm amazed at all the things we think we can achieve in one day. For instance, tomorrow, I'm going to read 5 papers, fix that issue that I've had for the last 4 weeks, finish my introduction. I'm also going to eat healthy, do an hour of yoga, take an actual shower, and perhaps build a unicorn. If you go into the day or week or month with unrealistic expectations, you are going to feel like a failure all the time. And you don't have to. So start with setting up SMART goals. First, be specific. For instance, you have 7 interviews to transcribe and you know 1 interview will take you 3 days to complete. So for this week, you can say, transcribe 2 interviews. Pro tip, it's always a good idea to start your goal with a verb. Second, is the goal measurable? As in, is there a quantifiable way for you to know that you have completed your goal? In our example, I dare say yes, because you'll know you have completed the goal once you've transcribed 2 interviews. Pro tip, if a goal is not measurable, then it is just a dream. Third, is the goal attainable? Ask yourself, do I have the capability and the capacity to achieve this goal? If yes, great. If no, we need to chop up the goal into smaller pieces. But looking at our example, I would say that yeah, this goal is attainable. Penultimately, the goal needs to be relevant. Some other SMART goal write-ups indicate that the R stands for realistic, but let's stick to relevant for now. So ask yourself, is the thing that I'm doing adding value and contributing to the overall goal, which in our case is the dissertation or thesis? And in our example, I would say, yeah, it is. Last, the goal needs to be time-based. You must have a start and end date for the goal. So in our case, we can say the goal needs to be completed by Friday. This Friday. I've been using SMART goals for over a decade, and trust me, it works, not only in managing your time more effectively, but also in lowering the anxiety that comes with completing something so big. To elevate tip number 2, let me introduce you to tip number 3, which is making use of a Kanban board. More often than not, you will not only have one goal at a specific time, and this is a great way for you to fit in as many goals as possible into a time frame without overloading yourself. Here is how to create a simple Kanban board. Create a board with 2 sections. Now you can do this on paper, electronically, whatever works best for you. One will be the backlog section where you can add all your SMART goals. On my board, I have all my goals: school, work, personal, everything. That way I can look at my time holistically, which curbs my enthusiasm for overcommitting myself in a specific period. Once you have your backlog going, create an active period, which is a sprint. This can be a week, 2 weeks, month, whatever works for you. Then very simply add 3 columns: not started, in progress, and completed. So how this works: before a sprint starts, you will do a backlog grooming session where you will evaluate the goals in the backlog and decide which goals you are going to complete in the next active sprint. Once you have decided, move these goals into the not started column. Pro tip: only move goals into the active period if you are confident that you will be able to complete all of them in the sprint. If you have any SMART goal that will take longer than the active period you decided on, chop them up into smaller pieces. Big massive goals are the things that inspire us, but it can also cripple us, so create smaller chunks of activities that are more manageable. As you start working on the goals, move them into the in progress column, and eventually you would want to move them all into the completed column come the end of the sprint. If more activities pop up, just add them to the backlog. There may be times when things don't go exactly according to plan. In those instances, just move the activity to the next active sprint, but aim to replace it with another SMART goal. That way you can still get momentum going. Now I know not all of us deal with snags in the same way, which brings me to tip number 4. If you are feeling stressed or anxious or overwhelmed and you just want to give up because things are not going according to plan, or just in general, this tip may help you. This is what I call triggers and rituals. So I learned this while I was battling PTSD, but I also found this technique very helpful throughout my PhD. So this is how it works. Whenever I felt like I wanted to give up or just plain sick and tired of everything, I would do 3 things. 1, be still and identify the trigger. As in, why am I feeling the way that I am? And I do this without blame and without being hard on myself. Throughout my PhD, I noticed 3 distinct triggers. Now this may be different for you, but I just want to share mine so you can see the process. A, I had an overwhelming to-do list. B, I didn't know what the heck was going on. And C, my brain was too busy. I had all these ideas in my head, but I couldn't streamline them into ideas and coherent sentences that can show up on my thesis. Once I identified the trigger, I could move on to step 2, which was to find physical activities to counter this feeling of helplessness. And this is where the ritual comes in. I'm calling it a ritual because whenever I was dealing with a specific trigger, I would automatically do the corresponding ritual. That way I reduced decision fatigue, and it also reduced the length of time that I was feeling helpless or anxious or anything like that. For the overwhelming to-do list, I would create lists. Good old-fashioned pen and paper was really relaxing and helped me to make sense of all the things that I needed to do. So these activities would go into my backlog, and I would use the SMART goals to be realistic about them. Whenever new activities popped up, instead of freaking out, I would remind myself that it's a good thing for me to pick this up now, before I submit, as opposed to the examiner picking it up later. For when I didn't know what was going on, I would break that up into 2 categories. Do I need outside help, or am I just confused? If I needed outside help, I would agree on a date and time for a consult with my supervisor or anyone else who was in a position to be of assistance. If my entire thesis was contingent on this outside help, as in I couldn't progress at all, I would take the days leading up to the consult off. Because what else was I gonna do? Stressing is like being in a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. So instead of stressing, I would visit my family or get my hair done or do anything that made me feel alive, really. If it was just confusion, I would take a mandatory 2 days off, and on the 3rd day, I would reread my thesis. You'd be surprised at the insight you get from revisiting your own work. And if my brain was too busy, I would organize something in my home or go for a walk. Any menial tasks that didn't require brain cells were very effective. It freed my brain up to process information without me interfering. Oftentimes, this clarity also happened when I was sleeping, so I would sleep with a notepad next to my bed. This brings me to tip number 5. Give yourself permission to take a break. There is a huge difference between just taking a break and allowing yourself to take a break. When we take a break without giving ourselves permission, we feel guilty, and it is this guilt that robs us from recharging and getting excited about contributing to knowledge. So you need to tell yourself that you're going to take a break and you're going to be happy about it. Your thesis can wait. You need to learn how to let go of your thesis temporarily from time to time, else you're going to go through this entire experience on sheer willpower, and we are not built to rely on willpower for extended periods of time. Speaking of, here is tip number 6. Let it go. This was one of the mindset changes that was very difficult for me to adopt, but it changed my life in general and was also one of the reasons why I only experienced a mild case of personal suckage. As humans, we have this unique ability to hold on to stuff, and we are more likely to hold on to the things that hurt us than helped us, whether it is something someone did to us or whether it is something that we did to ourselves. On the research journey, it is no different. I mean, I royally messed up my data collection. 9 months I spent collecting data. While a woman was creating a child, I was creating garbage. Let it sink in for a little bit. 9 months. Needless to say, I was very, very mad and disappointed in myself for making such a huge mistake that added a couple of months to my research journey. And I could have gotten into a spiral of blame and despair, but I chose to let it go. And this is how I went going about it. First, I gave myself a time frame to be mad at myself. 12 hours. That was it. But that meant at the end of 12 hours, I needed to get over my denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and I needed to accept that things are the way they are because they got that way. Second, at the end of the 12 hours, I also needed to come up with a plan. In this particular instance, I didn't have a plan on how to fix the data debacle, but I did have a plan of how to go about creating the eventual plan. I found that, and this is in general, if I don't put a time frame to it and I don't set a goal of creating a corrective action plan, I'm always in my feelings, which is just a breeding ground for spiraling. I've been living by this principle for a few years now, and I've never been happier. I always pair letting go with failing forward, which is tip number 7. I find that we have grown so accustomed to chastising ourselves over the littlest of things that go wrong, and oftentimes we become our worst critic as opposed to our best cheerleader. The thing is, research is always about doing something new, and when you do something new, it inevitably comes with making a few mistakes, and we need to learn to accept that that is okay. Because when we make mistakes, we get the opportunity to learn from it, and that is as valuable as getting something right the first time around. Now, there is another place where failure plays a huge role, and this is the fear of failure. This can prohibit us from progressing. For instance, you've never done a literature review, so you procrastinate because you are afraid of trying it and it not working out. This fear is adding to your stress levels, and it is also just prolonging the completion of your journey. It is very counterproductive, so my advice is just go for it. Make mistakes, learn from it, and continue the continuous improvement cycle. Tip number 8, perspective. This is another principle type tip, another one that made a massive difference in my life in general and equally so on my research journey. Look, in the beginning of time, school didn't exist. There were no such thing as degrees, no honors, masters, or PhDs. It is not essential to our being. So why are we putting so much pressure on ourselves to do the thing that in the grander scheme of things really isn't that important? If we don't eat, we die. If we don't breathe, we die. If we don't submit our assignment by midnight, yeah, the sun will still rise tomorrow. So try again then. Perspective. Now, I'm not saying be lazy and just quote, well, tomorrow's another day. That is procrastination, and that's a whole different issue. I am saying it's great to have goals, essential or not, and it is great to do our best to attain them. But if for some reason we are not going to meet our goal, pump the brake, be thankful for what we've already achieved thus far, and try again tomorrow. So whenever I feel like I put pressure on myself, I ask one simple question. What is the worst that can happen if I don't do this right now? And if the answer is anything short of a catastrophe, I'm like, yeah, I'll try again tomorrow. This brings me to tip number 9, which is all about deciding what is important at a specific point in time. Prioritizing. Think of yourself as a system. Now, a system is made up of subsystems, and in this case, let's imagine our subsystems are work, health, and research. When we have competing goals between subsystems, the entire unit work at a suboptimal rate. For instance, in the beginning of my PhD journey, I was extremely unhappy at work. It was a toxic environment, and each day that passed, I had less and less energy and willpower to be the best version of myself when it came to the value I bring to the workplace. So the goal of the work subsystem was eventually reduced to survive. Whereas the reason I started my PhD in the first place was to be better at my job. These two goals started to compete with each other, and because of this competition, me as a whole felt despondent, depressed, and I was just sick and tired. So the entire system, as in me, was breaking down. And this feeling of unhappiness was not only created by competing goals, but also because everything in my life was competing for the same resources. As in, I couldn't continue working up to 16-hour days and work on my thesis without my health being affected. And this is where prioritization comes in. I realized that if I wanted to get to the other side of this thesis as unscathed as I possibly could, there were times that I just needed to take a step back and prioritize other things. In my case, I needed to sort out my work situation urgently as it had major impact on how I felt about myself. I also had to make a concerted effort to make my health a priority because the unhappier I got at work, the more I neglected taking care of myself. This meant that I needed to take a break from my thesis for a little bit. And if you find yourself in this position where research is not the most important thing, don't feel guilty for taking a step back. We prioritize because there is only so much we can do at the same time. And this brings me to tip number 10, which is get yourself a support structure that works for you. This includes who need to be around you and who need to stay away from you. One thing to remember is that you may be the only one doing the research, but you're not the only one in this journey. My advice is, 1, to have an open conversation with your friends and family and be very specific about what you need, and equally important, what you don't need. For instance, I didn't allow people to visit my home without making prior arrangements. 2, be open to where support may come from. For me, an unexpected and very important pillar in my support structure was Uber Eats and Mr. Delivery. I have this unhealthy habit of forgetting to eat when I'm busy, and I realized that while I don't have the energy or motivation to cook, I still needed to make this a priority. So I outsourced it. So think about what you need and don't need from others to make this journey a success. Tip number 11. Under no circumstances are we to compare ourselves with others. There is always going to be someone who is a little further along than we are. And them having reached that point should not take away from our progress. If you keep on comparing yourself to someone else, you are going to hit your lowest low very quickly. And that goes for life as well. We have this nasty habit of comparing our worst selves to someone else's best self. And it's very difficult to be a winner when you do that. Speaking of being winners, tip number 12, celebrate the small wins. Like I had rituals for when I was triggered, I also had rituals for when I achieved milestones, whether they were big or small. Now, of course, this will be customized based on your likes, but I thought I'd share what I do in the event that you would like to draw from it. I had several categories. When I completed a task on my Kanban board, I rewarded myself with a 20-minute episode of a series I've already watched. I specifically chose to rewatch series so I don't get tempted to binge. Truthfully, I also made it a point to watch an episode right before I went to bed to reward myself for any effort I made, whether I finished a task or only progressed it as much as I possibly could. If I completed all the tasks on my Kanban board for a specific sprint, I rewarded myself with a trip to my parents. My mom is an excellent baker and there is always something great to look forward to at home, so that was a great incentive. Each time I completed a chapter, I rewarded myself with 3 days off, some type of beauty treatment, and a 3-course dinner and movie combo picnic style in my living room, or I went to the theater with my friends, or just something major. Having something to look forward to is great motivation. If none of these tips help you, please, and I mentioned this before but I feel I must reiterate, please seek professional help. This journey is not the easiest thing to do, but be kind enough to yourself to find the help that you need in order to get through this. That is all from me today. If you have any questions, please add it to the comment section. Like this, share this, subscribe to this. This is Dr. J, signing off.